Pop quiz. If you live in the US, UK, or Canada and have property in the Caribbean, do you need to make two wills? The answer may surprise you. Keep on listening for the answer later on in this episode. Welcome to Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture, hosted by me, Alexandria Miller. Strictly Facts teaches the history, politics, and activism of the Caribbean and connects these themes to contemporary music and popular culture. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture. I'm not even going to waste any time because, as you all know, I've been enjoying this venture that we've been taking through Caribbean cuisine across the region, truly. And so, kicking off our discussion today, we are focusing on the diverse food cultures of Haiti and Barbados. I am tremendously honored to have two guests on the show. Firstly, recipe developer, digital creator, and head chef of Knockout Kitchen, Kerline, Ordeus, an attorney by day, digital recipe developer, and the woman behind Mrs. Island Breeze, the blog and social media pages, Leanna, Pierre. So thank you both so much for joining me for this episode. And why don't you kick us off with you telling our listeners a little bit more about yourselves, your connections to the Caribbean, which I didn't necessarily give away yet, and what inspired your passions for Caribbean food?
Well, thank you for having us. I guess I'll kick it off. So I'm Leanna Pierre. I am first generation Bajan American. So both of my parents are born and raised in Barbados. They both migrated to the U.S. as adults. I think my love for just cooking in general, not even just Bajan cuisine, really came from my mom and my grandma. Cooking has always been time that we shared together. Whenever there was food, there was family, there was time spent together, there was conversations, there was laughter. And so I think a lot of my favorite memories and fondest memories, whether it's with family or friends, circulate around food. And so it's always been that great connector for me. And then speaking more specifically to Bajan cuisine, being first generation American, going back to Barbados was a frequent occurrence when I was a child, right? But I think for a lot of people, as you get older, you get into high school, you get into more activities, your summers are taken up with different things. You start to get a little bit further and further removed, and it becomes a little bit more challenging to make those trips on a consistent basis. So, food is just another way to maintain that connection for me.
All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Kerline Ordeus, and I was actually born in Haiti. Both of my parents are Haitian, and I was born in Okai. So I know a lot of the listeners would be familiar with that. But I've been cooking for a very long time, for over 20 years. I remember as a child growing up in Haiti and watching, the villagers, my auntie, everyone just gather around and cook and learn from each other. And it was always how food was celebrated. I know that, from a culture perspective, food is huge in Haiti. And I think that, we always say that if someone cooks for you, they love you. So that
Mhm.
is how I show my love. So that is why I cook. I love to feed people. So, a lot of the way that Haitian food is made, you can definitely tell that there's a lot of love, there's a lot of passion that goes into the way that we create each of our dishes, by the way that we prep and washes our meat to the way that we marinate it and execute the dish. So I've always been very passionate about cooking. And for that very reason is to bring people together. Like you said, Juliana, I think that food is healing, and the way that we prep it should be from that same mindset as well. So that is how I've been able to share my love here, even in Los Angeles, where there's not many, Haitian restaurants. And so I've been trying to just bridge that gap here and also, open up a restaurant here, hopefully one day.
I will be one of your first customers.
Everyone is welcome to join. Everyone from the diaspora throughout the Caribbean. I know that I love food from everywhere. And you can tell how food is definitely heavily influenced throughout the Caribbean. And I know you'll get to some of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you both for introducing yourselves and again telling our listeners a little bit more about who you are and your love for Caribbean foods. As you were mentioning, Kerline, I definitely do want us to talk about these foods, right? We are a region that I think sometimes gets smushed together for a lack of better way of phrasing, right? And of course, there are similarities, but there are also very unique differences based off our national identities, regional identities. We've had several conversations so far based off these histories already. And so, really, with a focus on Barbados and Haiti, what do you all think makes your foods particular and special and individual, particularly for the region?
From a Haitian perspective, when you go to Haiti, even still today, you'll see, diverse people throughout the Caribbean. And definitely the food of Haiti, I would say, is a fusion of, the Tainos, the people that were there before, right? African. You'll see a lot of the Spanish influence also throughout the Caribbean, French, and then Arab influence. And I can name some of these dishes, for example, griot. The Tainos actually were the first to be observed to be, slow cooking meats. So they actually invented barbecue, and I don't think a lot of people know that. And griot is huge. It's actually our national food in Haiti, and everyone, even outside of Haiti, they're like, "Oh, you making griot? I know what griot is. I want some." So that's just an example of how we're just fully immersed. And pickles, for example, the way we make it is different, but I know Jamaicans, they have a version of pickles. My friend from El Salvador, she commented on one of my posts one day, and she's like, "Oh my God, we make this as well,
Mm,
but we don't use Scotch bonnet or habanero. We use jalapenos." That's crazy, right? So it's mind blowing to sort of like make these connections. But I think that these different cultures that I've listed, they've left their mark on our cuisine still today. The way that we cook it, like beans and rice. You can make these connections because even Mexican food, when you look at it, the beans, the way they cook it is just, it's different than how Haitians make it, but it's also like it's a staple in their diet.
I would say, kind of following up on what Kerline was saying, I think what makes Bayesian food unique is the flavor profile. And to her point, the flavor profile that you're going to get is a result of the combination of African, Portuguese, Indian, British, indigenous flavors combined. Like, we can't ignore the impact that the transatlantic slave trade had on how those flavors developed and have melded together over time. And so, to Kerline's point, there is this kind of across the diaspora, these similarities in foods with things like rice being an anchor, lots of stews, use of okra. And you see that not just across the Caribbean or African diaspora, but even when you get to places like South Carolina, there is a very direct connection between Charleston, South Carolina, literally down to the architecture. If you visit, you will notice a lot of the buildings look and feel like Barbados. And that's because plantation owners who, after they left Barbados, went to settle Charleston as Little Barbados. So you'll get some of that even in the food there as well. So there is this interconnected nature. And so it is this amalgamation of flavors. And I think part of what makes food so fun and interesting, to Kerline's point, you'll have a lot of the same ingredients, but depending on who's preparing it and what country, completely different flavor. Like, when you look at, say, jollof rice and pilau from, say, Trinidad or Tobago and cook up rice from Barbados, it's a lot of the same ingredients, right? But they taste wildly different. So I think, those flavor profiles are what I would say make Barbados and really each Caribbean island different.
Mm-hmm. And to add to what you're saying, Leanna, it's so crazy to me. Like when I went to New Orleans, for example, and you can clearly see, the influences from Haiti. The
Mhm.
way everything that they made, was just mind blowing. The way they use okra, for example, I was like, okay, this is like from Haiti, and the flavor profiles also. You can definitely see the influences there as well. And the last thing I would like to add too is epis. The entire Caribbean have their version of
Yep.
green seasoning.
And that's all we call it, green seasoning in my
Green
house.
seasoning, yes. And, Haitians, we call it épis, but I think that is, the main ingredients in our cuisine that makes it so different. And, épis is pretty much, it's bold, it's a different spices, for example, we use green onions, a lot of people would use bell peppers in theirs. They'll use tomatoes if they want to make it red, or if they want to keep it green, they'd leave it out. And a lot of herbs, thyme, which is generally used in Haiti, Scotch bonnet, and all that is blended together, and it's used to marinate our meats. Like not even meats too. We use Haitian spaghetti. We use that in Haitian spaghetti, and then everyone's like, "What makes Haitian spaghetti so good?" Blah blah blah. Epis is the answer, and I'm telling you,
That needs to
it's
be on
the
the
same
shirt.
way.
Epis is the answer.
Epis is the answer to a lot of our food and why it's so different and why it's so delicious.
Thank you both for leading me to my next question, because not only have you situated us in that sort of historical framework, thinking of the African, the indigenous, the obviously colonial influences in our foods, but the fact that our people have then gone on to influence other places, like, as you both noted, to South Carolina, New Orleans, as well, where several people from what was then Saint-Domingue becoming Haiti, leaving after the Haitian Revolution, based off their own principles or ideas about Black independence, right? Then relocating to what is now New Orleans, and then even bringing enslaved Africans with them. So it I think paints a broader picture of not only our foods, but the way that our foods have also then gone on to influence other places as well, right? We've been sort of not necessarily dancing around this idea, but I really want to ground us in talking about some of these foods and their connections to the different people who have influenced our histories, right? Some influences or some foods I automatically think of are Cou-Cou in Barbados, for instance, and just various ways that you can directly point them to, as you both are mentioning, to like West Africa, which is, in my view, very similar to fufu, right? And so could you all situate us in this moment and highlight, what are some very popular foods in Barbados and Haiti today and how they connect to some of these influences?
Let's take a quick break.
If you live in the US, UK, or Canada and have property in the Caribbean, in most cases, you will not need to make two wills to pass on your property. However, consulting with an estate planning attorney in each country is important to ensure that the laws will allow your wishes. That's where Caribbean Legal Solutions comes in handy. They already have a team of legal professionals located across the diaspora and in the region that can answer your questions, eliminating the need to search for an attorney in each place. From Jamaica to Grenada, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and beyond, Caribbean Legal Solutions is your reliable partner for legal needs both local and abroad. Contact Caribbean Legal Solutions today at 1-877-418-2723 or via WhatsApp at 718-887-6141, or visit their website www.caribbeanlegalsolutions.com and allow them to help you or your family members plan with security. This podcast ad contains general information about Caribbean Legal Solutions and is not intended as a legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney for legal advice specific to your situation.
Sure. Yeah, why not? So tomtom, as you suggested, I think that's, fufu and for, folks in West Africa, the only difference about fufu and Haitian tomtom is literally we use breadfruit. Okay, that is the only difference. And breadfruit is thoroughly, of course, found in Haiti, and especially, depending on the different season, we have way too much of it. So I'm wondering, who said, well, we have a whole lot of this. We could make fufu out of this instead of like using plantains to make it. So traditionally, that's huge, huge in Haiti. And you use it with your hands, even in the way that we gather around. You use your hands to eat it. And a lot of food and, the African culture, they use their hands to eat. And I feel like we need to go back to that way. People are so afraid to use their hands. And I even get comments too on my page. They're like, why are you not using this to eat it? Well, you can use your hands. And I feel like it just grounds you in the way that it's supposed to be eaten. Like when you have people gather around the table, you set up the dish and then you're like digging with your hands. And it just like opens people up to like vulnerability. Let's share this dish together. Let's enjoy this together. And I think it's the same way of connecting this to West African, how they eat with their hands and how they enjoy the food, with their families, right? Traditionally. Another one that I think that we don't talk about is cassava. You can find cassava and Christopher Columbus, I hate to reference him, but in his diary, when he got to Haiti and thought that he was in India, right? He talked about cassava, right? He talked about how the indigenous people, the Tainos, were using the roots, right, to make these different dishes. But I see that the connection with okra, right? Okra is literally malanga, right? And some people don't use malanga to make it, and they use it's the other one that's used with cassava. But anyway, it's escaping me. It's another root, but West African, they use it. So I'm curious to even know, because I don't know this myself, did the African bring it to the island, or is it like they both had it, right? Because we know that we both use this, to the core, whether if it's okra. I remember, I do catering also. My friend was like, please tell me you can make me okra. And guess where she was from? She's African. And it's crazy because I'm like, well, how do you make this? Was that something that was later learned, in Haiti, or is it something that actually the Africans brought to us? Also, I don't know if we'll never know, but I always thought that was interesting. But go ahead, Leanna. I go on a rampage sometimes. I'm really excited
No,
about this.
you listen. We are kindred spirits. You are speaking to my little foodie heart. You can go on as long as you want. So I would say for me, in terms of Barbados, which foods, I feel like you can't talk about Barbados without talking about flying fish and cou-cou. That's our national dish. Cou-cou is made from cornmeal and okra and, salt and pepper and seasonings and things like that. And so there is a similarity to fufu. It's not quite as pulley in the way that you can like eat it with your hands, because it doesn't like quite pull apart the same way, even though it does kind of come together. We often talk about it in the context of West Africa, but I also think there are some similarities to a dish in East Africa. There's one called ugali, and it's basically you take dried out corn and you take a stone and kind of grind it into a flour, and then you mix it with water. Now with cou-cou, we're seasoning it as we go. We're adding things to it. We're adding okra, we're adding pepper, we're adding these things. Ugali is really designed to be just the corn flour and water. Whatever flavor you get comes from the stew that you serve over it, whether it's vegetable based or it has meat. So it's not designed for you to really like spice it up, although of course it's your kitchen, you can do what you want. But traditionally, it's just the corn flour and water. I think that's interesting and also similar to cou-cou, but also different at the same time. So you're seeing those connections, not just from West Africa, but also East Africa. Other dishes that I feel like are central to Barbados, macaroni pie. That's basically, it's not a pie. It doesn't have like crust like an apple pie. It's basically our version of baked macaroni and cheese, but it's different. We use evaporated milk in it. We put peppers in it. We use mustard. We also use anchor cheese, which is like the unofficial cheese, or maybe the official cheese of Barbados, but it's a New Zealand cheese. It's not a Bajan cheese, but it is what we use. It comes in a big vacuum sealed brick. Like if you're eating macaroni pie, you're having anchor cheese in there. Pudding and sauce. Pudding is made from sweet potato, and you bake it so it's kind of this sweet and savory dish. The sauce can be made with different parts of the pig. My dad likes pig ear sauce, pigfoot sauce. It's like pickled, so there's different ways that you can do it. lots of breadfruit. We love doing breadfruit chips, or we will roast the breadfruit and do like a loaded breadfruit with like saltfish that's seasoned, um, cassava pone. So we use cassava as well in soups and stews, but we also use it to make like a sweet dish, almost like a dessert. So think of it almost like a bread pudding, but instead of bread, made from cassava instead. So again, even in just talking about Haiti and Barbados, all of these similarities in ingredients to create amazing, delicious dishes that are wildly different and all equally delicious.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Leanna. That's crazy because when you were talking about your version of macaroni, that's literally how Haitian make their mac and cheese. We also use evaporated milk. That's why I was like, stop it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what's different is, so one of the things that I've noticed about macaroni and cheese, because y'all know macaroni and cheese gets serious
Exactly.
everywhere.
Yes.
So one of the things, the first thing that I noticed when I went to the Bahamas was the type of noodle that they use for
Mhm.
macaroni and cheese. So they use like almost like a ziti noodle, much broader and shorter. In Barbados, at least the way my grandma made it growing up, we used elbows, but the long elbows, not the short curled ones that you're used to seeing in American macaroni and cheese. So that's also something that I noticed that is different depending on where you're from, even down to the type of noodle, even if the ingredients are the same, and even how you serve it, right? So, like a lot of times here, macaroni and cheese in the South, it's loose, right? Like when even if it's baked, when you take it apart, it kind of falls onto the plate and you can, add whatever you want to it, let the sauce from the sweet potatoes hit it. But I noticed in the Bahamas when they do it, they cut it almost into a cube, right? Like it's served like a square. It's not a loose kind of falling macaroni and cheese. So we could probably have a whole
I agree.
series just
I
on
agree
macaroni.
because the way you're talking about the corn, ugali, I've made that connection before, with my Kenyan friends. They will eat ugali. And I'm like, what is ugali? And everybody's like, you either hate it or you love it. And then I realized that's my mule.
There you go, right? And that's the beautiful thing, I think, about food in general, right? Like I didn't even mention fish cakes, right? In Barbados, which is basically like fritters. So if you go to the Bahamas, they have conch fritters. If you go to like maybe like Puerto Rico, you might have bacalaitos, right? But it's all like a fritter with some kind of
Mm-hmm.
seafood fish, whether it's a shellfish or fish that has bones and scales inside, right? So they're just all of these connections. And when you get people who love food and love to share together, you get to have beautiful conversations like this.
Yes, I agree. And I love this. It makes me happy when we talk about how we're just so connected. And I tell folks all the time throughout the Caribbean, I don't know what the fuss is about. We all love each other, whatever the fuss is, at the end of the day, we are the same people that were dropped at a different border,
Yep.
at
Port
a
of
different stop.
disembarkation. That's the difference.
Exactly.
That's it.
And then whatever influence that happened, that were throughout that island, that's what, the food looks like also, like it's so crazy because like some of those patties, those are like heavily French influence, pate code, all of the different way that pastries is used, that is a direct influence of the French. Even with, you were talking about the different types of macaroni, that's an influence of the Italian because we know that they were the one who invented pasta, right? So somehow, how did someone from Italy ended up in the Caribbean, right? But let's not talk about, let's not get to that. Alexandra, that's your job, so I'll give it
It's a big
the mic
job.
back to you.
It's a very big job, but I think that's the point of these conversations, right? That these foods that we eat, that we partake in, that are very much central to our families, right, to our cultures, and to us really being who we are not only demonstrative of these greater historical connections, but are also ways, as you were pointing to, Kerline, to draw us together, right? While, a Jamaican patty may not necessarily look like a Haitian patty or it's baked a different way and, which one has this ingredient versus this thing, it's a way for us to draw commonalities and dismantle some of those maybe like national borders and identities. Definitely, definitely. You all have brought us to some amazing foods that I definitely want us to talk about. Some of which that have been very tremendous, I think, in shaping our national awarenesses, right? And even building who these nations have become as very significant for our region. And so griot was brought up. Cou-Cou and flying fish, also another national dish, was brought up, but there are so many. And so I'm really asking you all to possibly share a few other really important dishes, soup Joumou included.
I was
And
gonna say that's the most important.
definitely, and share a little bit of the history behind them. And maybe even some challenges, modern day challenges that are now plaguing some of the ways that we eat these foods today.
So I know you asked for dishes, but I kind of want to turn it a little bit to focus on rum because sugar was such an important part of the history of Barbados. Like Barbados has always been small but mighty, right? And when I say small, I'm talking about physical size, the mileage, the acreage, right? Despite that, there was a time that Barbados was the wealthiest colony in the British Empire. And that was directly a result of sugarcane and sugar production, which ultimately led to the production of rum. And Barbados has one of the oldest distilleries in the world. Mount Gay rum is the official rum of Barbados. And so I feel like even though we're talking about food, it is hard to talk about the cuisine of Barbados without talking about that legacy of sugar and rum and the importance that it has even today. And it extends even further when we start to talk about music and look at things like soca and calypso and what we have as crop over, which has a direct connection going back to the days of slavery and the end of harvest and being able to gather with food and with drink to celebrate that harvest season is over, right? So today, people from the outside looking in may just see rum and revelry, which there is, and that is fun, but it is grounded in history, right? And so all of those things have an impact on food, on drink, on celebration, on how we come together. So I know you asked about dishes, but I feel like rum is a piece that is just so seminal to Barbados beyond just like it tastes good and it makes good rum punch. It was literally built into the economics of the island.
I couldn't agree more, Leanna. I think that we need to talk about rum. I know that is a story that's barely covered, but I know Barbancourt, they've been in service since like 1862, I believe. So that definitely talks about the historical facts around sugarcane, right? We know why, the Europeans, why they came over and they brought slaves from Africa just to work these different plantations. But I think hardly do we cover rum. I think Haitians have one of the best rum in the world. I have not had your rum though, Leanna, but I'm curious.
We can exchange.
Yes, I'm curious to have some Bajan rum. But I know that is something that we've always prided ourselves in is the way that we make. We also make Kerline. That's the white version of what I think people will probably call that vodka here, and that is a lot of like our delicious beverages that we'll combine with passion fruit, for example. That is a staple, I think, throughout the Caribbean. But to answer your question, Alexandria, I think soup Joumou, that is our big significant dish. I have not had one of my friends that have tasted soup Joumou and have not wanted a second bowl. And I think that speaks to, the love that is put in it. And so every Haitian throughout the Caribbean, on December 31st, they're in their kitchen, and guess what they're making? They're making soup Joumou. Okay, now soup Joumou is, traditionally made with different squashes, right? And we know towards the end of the year, that's when it's squash season, right? Everybody's making squash. So, there's like, a lot of people would add like meats, like beef, the different vegetables. Some folks will add pasta to it. I don't, but that's a fight that I have on my page too. What? Where's the pasta? I'm like, I don't want no pasta in my soup.
I
So
love pasta, but I also love pasta. So there's that.
I do too, but I don't want it in my soup. So it's always something with that. But traditionally, this is celebrated for Independence Day because Haitians have been making this soup before like people were there, and so historically after we gained our independence, because we were prohibited to drink this soup, right? It was considered for the elite, right? Only the elite folks could, which were what, slave masters and their family. So after we gained our independence, we said, forget this. Our liberators, they're saying, you know what, on this day, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna drink the soup that was once forbidden to us. So every year, this tradition have been carried out by Haitians until this day, and I think will continue for the rest of our lives, and our people after it too. So I think that there is strength in saying, you know what, this is something that was taken from us, because the soup, the way that it's made, you can tell there is so much love, because you can't make this soup in 1 hour. Okay, you're spending your whole day in that kitchen. You're gonna marinate this beef ahead of time, right? You're gonna marinate the meat if you're gonna add meat in it, and that's marinated for at least 24 hours. And then you're cutting up so many different vegetables. And I'm talking about these vegetables, and people also talk about how folks in the Caribbean do not eat healthy. Our food is very unhealthy, which I have made it my life business to say that is false, because everything that is in that soup are vegetables that bring, so much for the body. For example, like there's leek in the soup. There's different starches, like,
Yeah.
we talked
Tons of
about,
root
like, yeah,
vegetables.
yuca, exactly. Beautiful root vegetables. Let's talk about yellow yams, for example. People don't know what that's made of and what it can do for you, right? So I feel like a lot of our vegetables, a lot of the food that we eat in general are very, very healthy for the body, for your skin, for your, heart health, that helps you with diabetes. There's like so much, like our foods are, I think they bring in health and wealth also.
I forgot to mention, I have to mention salt bread. Salt bread is to Barbados what like baguettes are to France. Like it's that kind of importance. And you'll see, I feel like a lot of Caribbean cultures have their own kind of a version of what bread is important. In a Guyana, you may have like tennis roll. Like every culture kind of has their thing. Like that's like our tennis roll, salt bread. And it's called that to distinguish from like sweet bread, which when we say sweet bread, we're talking about like a coconut bread that has like cinnamon and nutmeg and all those kinds of things. So the idea of salt bread is to distinguish so you know exactly what it is. But it's basically like a dinner roll, and we use it to make cutters, which is a dinner roll with like cheese in it. Sometimes you could I, as a kid, used to like to put fried flying fish in it and put a whole bunch of pepper sauce on it. But, there are different ways that you can do it. I would say salt bread is up there. And I think, to your point, in terms of importance and history, it's one of those foods where it doesn't require a lot of ingredients, right? You're talking about flour, yeast, salt, water. And so if money is scarce or access to lots of ingredients is scarce, this is something that you can make, that it's delicious, it's filling, it doesn't cost a lot of money. And so I think that there is a legacy in that as well.
I love that. And I agree. There's like so many dishes that can be made, for la bouillie, for example. We have so many different versions of porridge, and those are easy to make, but like filling also for, those times where, folks are having difficulties with, keeping food on the table. And I think that, throughout the Caribbean, you'll see everyone has a version of different porridges that they make. Haitians love porridge, so we got a million of them out there. We make them with so many different things, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't know you could make it with plantains." Yeah, Haitians have made it with plantains, and I've seen that Jamaicans also have done it with not only corn but also with plantains also.
Listen, the Caribbean's gonna remix. If we don't do
okay,
anything else,
listen,
we're gonna remix the remix.
No, I couldn't agree more.
You all bring up so many tremendous points. I mean, I think to the earlier point about Barbados and its impact, I had a previous episode where we talked about crop over and Barbados as being what was once called Little England, for your point, Leanna, that it was such a great impact on the British Empire, that some people are like not even aware, right? Soup Joumou, first off, I really do want to commend the awareness, I think has definitely increased, especially as it's been named a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage on it's joined that list very recently, right? And I think that has definitely helped to bring the awareness globally of not just the soup in itself, right? But the importance that Haiti has had in shaping what we identify as this longer history of Black independence, Black sovereignty, right? I have a rum episode coming, so it's in the works.
I can't wait.
It's probably going to have to be a little bit of a series too, so it's coming. But yeah, tremendous, tremendous points that you all made. And I think even bringing me to my next point, there are national dishes, of course, right? But you all ended on talking about sort of more common foods or maybe lesser known foods from an outwarder or outsider looking in, right? But things that are sustainable, think foods that are integral to our everyday presences. Even the fact that like for Jamaica, you can eat a patty for lunch, right? Like that is or breakfast or whatever it is. It's a thing that many people will do to the point where it's been like a more recently there's been a deal for it, right? In terms of just that sort of awareness that everybody kind of might need to eat a patty at one point in the day, right? Whether it's just to get by or whatever. And so whether it's cutters, whether it's Haitian spaghetti, whichever ones you might want to dive into or potentially others. What are some of your favorite foods that, are must-haves in terms of trying Haitian or Bajan food that might, not immediately strike everybody's first look when they, are doing a search for your cuisine?
Oh man, that's a tough one. There's so many things. So all right. Let's start with drinks. You gotta have mabi. So mabi is made from tree bark. It is a very distinct and acquired taste. So it's one of those things where you either love it or you hate it. But I feel like that's quintessential Barbados. You gotta have mabi. Of course, I've already mentioned Mount Gay rum. You've got to have some of that if you're of age and drinking. I got to shout out Trudy Branker. She's the master distiller at Mount Gay. I can't help but notice that we're all women on this podcast episode today, and I think shouting out the impact and importance of women in developing cuisine across the diaspora. So shout out to Trudy Ann. We're so proud of you. You are killing it. So I would say that for drinks and maybe even fruity. It's a soda. It's super sweet. Don't drink too much of it. But I feel like you can't come to Barbados and not have fruity. If we're talking about fast food, you got to go to Chefette. Chefette is the home of roasted chicken and roti. And here's the thing, Barbados fast food, and I think this is probably true of fast food in a lot of the Caribbean, it doesn't taste like fast food. Like a roti from Chefette doesn't taste like, I don't know, a $1 burger or whatever. Like it tastes like somebody made this at home. Now it's still gonna taste better at home, but it's really good. I feel like you have to go to Chefette if you go to Barbados. In terms of what to eat that people wouldn't think of, everybody thinks of Cou-Cou and flying fish because it's the national dish. But what I really like is green banana Cou-Cou. So it is mashed green banana seasoned with salt and pepper and all kinds of deliciousness. And you can serve it with chicken, with fish, with whatever kind of stew. But I love mashed green banana Cou-Cou. So I think that's something that you should try if you go. Sea egg, that's something that you don't hear a lot about. Sea egg with rice. I think that's something that you should definitely try if you're in Barbados. Macaroni pie, of course. You just got to do it. Flying fish, if you can get it. I mean, I feel like all the flying fish have been picked out of the ocean because the ones that I'm getting are like this small. I don't like they're less than the palm of my hand. I don't know what's happened to the flying fish, but if you can get some, you should have that. Definitely roasted breadfruit and turnovers, coconut turnovers. So for dessert, that's one of my favorite things. There are these big, puffy, delicious rolls stuffed with spiced coconut and brushed with sugar water on top to give it just like a little bit of crust, but the bread is just soft and pillowy and it is absolute deliciousness. So yeah, I would put those on my list.
Trust me, I was writing things down as you were speaking. That mashed green banana, I'm on that. Okay, so I think for me, there is more to Haitian food than just griot. And I know that a lot, since it's our national food, a lot of people know about it and it's great, but I feel like rice in general, Haitian have made very best. We have so many different varieties of rice and the different ways that we make it with different beans. For example, mushroom rice. I think that is distinct to Haiti, right? The jonjon, which is the mushroom, is found in Haiti. And the way that it changes the complex of the rice is definitely something that's truly beautiful about that dish itself. And the rice is so good that you can eat it alone. And I know that you probably have heard that, but like it really is something, and it's so delicious. So mushroom rice, definitely get it with the real mushroom, not with just the bouillon,
The Maggie in the
the
black
Maggie
package.
bouillon. No, you can add a little Maggie bouillon in there too. That's fine. It doesn't hurt it, but like definitely with the real mushrooms, because mushroom in general is so good for you. So but people don't talk about that since our food is not healthy. I'm throwing shots here. But another thing that we do, any of the bean sauces also. And you'll see Haitians eating that with white rice because it's really that good. And we're talking now about the black peas. You can do it with red beans. You can do it with white beans. I mean, those are very popular, but also let's talk about the fish. In Haiti, red snapper is huge. And I think throughout the Caribbean, it truly is a Caribbean sensation. So, I think anything snapper with boiled plantains, fire. There's nothing better than that's my favorite dish, by the way. I've been thinking about it. It's red snapper with some boiled plantains. The plantains not completely green, just a little bit yellow, so you can get a little sweetener in there. If you know what I'm talking about,
We
watercress.
know.
You get that, and I'm telling you, you tear that up. And the fish doesn't need to be fried. It can just be, literally in sauce. I think that's my favorite. I feel like there are so many great food that you can try, like our patties, for example. Oh my God. Pate code is something. And I'm telling you, it's the feeling. You take one bite and you're like, oh my God, this is changing my life. And
You know what? I gotta challenge that. It's not just the filling. The pastry is
the
so
pastry,
flaky. Like
it is.
for me, it's both. It really is.
I have to agree with you for sure, but I'll be waiting for that. What is it that the Z in there, the egg? The moment you find the egg, and I'm telling you, there's something they do, they do to it that it just tastes so good. And I've made that for my partner, and she is in love. Okay, but I think that a lot of our like salted fish also, is it's also very delicious. Salted fish with plantains or yellow yams. I've been featuring a lot of that on my page recently. It's just to show that it doesn't have to be rice. Like there's other dishes that are just as delicious, from our cuisine. But yeah, I definitely say our mac and cheese, delicious. Definitely try it. We call it macaroni au gratin. I don't know why it has a French name, but Haitian spaghetti is really that good. So definitely try it. We have a lot of sweets also. I'm not huge on sweets, but I feel like some of the ones that we do very well, if it's not our porridge, it's gonna be pain patate. That's also a sweet bread dish. I think you definitely described the exact same one, Leanna, earlier. And I'm like, are you talking about the same dish that we don't even know that you guys make too? But it's a sweet potato bread, and I think that the way that that's made is just so delicious. Rum, definitely try some of those. We have also some street, and I remember getting those as a kid, is tika wall, and it's literally like it could be made with coleslaw, which is I think is guava bana. Is that how you say it in English, or the Spanish name for it? Soursop?
Yeah, soursop.
Yeah, soursop. But you can blend that into a juice. You can use evaporated milk in there, and then that consistent, you put it inside like a plastic little bag, you seal it, and then you put it in the freezer to freeze, and you have that throughout the day. My God.
They call those baggies in the Bahamas, and
Really? Okay, yeah.
we make popsicles out of them. We make soursop
Exactly.
popsicles
Or
and
bag
soursop tarts
juice.
as well.
But just, yeah, those are
Yeah.
the best. Even if, like, I remember as a kid, I used to be so, like, impatient. I'm like, oh, I just need it now. Even if it's not all the way frozen, girl, you still killing that because you still got that little juice. But there's so many varieties of those in Haiti, must have. I'm sure there's like so many that I'm missing, but like any of our, plantains also we've done very well. I think the entire Caribbean have done that well. The way that we use plantain in the best delicious way possible. Yeah, it's just incredible. But I think that, Haitians make lemonade, Haitian lemonade, something to be tried. Very simple, but delicious. And I'm sure like the Caribbean, a lot of us, we make it very similar too, because I think what it is in there is like that almond extract that we use, or like, the
Brown
different,
sugar
yeah, exactly,
instead of
vanilla
processed
extract,
sugar.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we use, like I would say like lemonade, if I'm gonna have lemonade in my house, I might as well just get a whole bag of lemons and of limes or whatever, and then just make it because it really tastes better.
It does.
And any of them, like watermelon juice, the way that we make those delicious. Um, but yeah, I can go on and on. Alexandra, I think I've given you enough maybe, but soup Joumou definitely top on the list if you've never tried it. I say find someone that will cook it well for you. I have not had bad soup Joumou, but I do see that everyone makes it different. Some people make it more watery, some people make it more, thick on the thicker side, which means they added probably more squash to it. But definitely a must try if you have not tried it.
I will certainly be adding these to not only my personal list to try, but definitely for our listeners. I'll include links and recipes from some of y'all's sites and everything as well onto our Strictly Facts syllabus, so our listeners can definitely check out when they have a chance. And so before closing out a little bit, I definitely would be remiss without asking you all, what are some of your favorite ways our foods, or your foods rather, show up in Haitian or Bajan popular culture?
I would say probably in soca music. I don't know why, but there's just something exciting about hearing that in music. Like there was one song. Oh man, this is many carnivals ago. Where there's a song called "Cheese Cut Hawaiian," and I told you about like the cut of sandwiches with cheese. That just like cracked me up. Like seeing it used in that different way. Whenever I see that, it just makes me smile. I'm like, I love my people. Y'all crack me up.
That's so funny. I think food is so loved in Haiti that, yeah, you hear it in our songs too. And I think that, throughout the Caribbean too, in a way that the history, I was listening to, I told my partner about, Ana Kaona, and, like her history in the Caribbean, and also, specifically to Haiti and what happened. And she was like, hold up, listen, there's a song about that, Ana Kaona, in Spanish. She was looking to play it for me, and I was like, huh, that's insane how that shows up. I love how our food definitely shows up in poems. Haitians are huge on folktale.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I feel like we write about our food. I feel like food is part of our history in Haiti. Another thing too I want to highlight is that if there was a true definition of blackity black and being proud of it, that would be Haitians. I think that we have always been proud of our African roots from the beginning, even though, you know, other parts of Haiti were not about that. They were more of like, I'm not Africans, I'm Caribbean. And, you know, Haitians are like, no, our mothers, our fathers, a lot of them can be traced to, you know, Africa. It's called Mother Africa for a change. So I think that, yes, songs, poems, our folktale, our history, it's all wrapped into our food for sure.
And I think even now, the piece that I'm seeing is as we talk about this connection to Africa, you have, you know, culinary historians now doing great work to make those connections. Like I immediately think of Michael Twitty and the work that he is doing to make those connections, not just from, hey, this is what the food is and how you make it, but this is how we got here. This is how it traveled. This is how it's changed over time. This is why, right? So I think that that's another way that we're seeing it. I don't know if that necessarily falls into pop culture, but I definitely think that it is becoming more common to see not just recipe writers or bloggers like myself, but culinary historians who are digging into the actual facts and doing a lot of what you're trying to do now in your blog and with what you have going on with your dissertation, doing that deep historical work that grounds the food.
Yeah, and I applaud you for that, Alexandria. And I was really excited to see that you reached out to me, and I was like, oh my God, by any means, I am not an expert in this. Oh my gosh,
That's
I'm
how I
scared.
felt too. I'm like, am I qualified to have this
Yes.
conversation?
Yes.
That's what I said too. Because, you know, from my perspective, I imagine our ancestors literally carrying out seeds, okay, throughout oceans so they can preserve part of who they were or part of who they are, right? Our food, I feel like it tells a story of how we have traveled from Africa all the way to the Caribbean. And you can see it in the way that, you know, traditionally pigeon peas, I believe, can be tracked back to West Africa, you know, but every person throughout the Caribbean, because I recently posted a pigeon pea rice, you know, rice video, and people were like, no, leave it up to the Jamaicans and so and so. And I'm like, no, pigeon peas is huge in the Haitian culture. And it, you know, the nutty flavor from it, it gives the rice a completely different profile also. But, you know, like to me, the way that I can make these connections is that our ancestors fought to keep this little bit of themselves. And we can see it now in the way that food shows up and how it just connects us back to where we all came from, which I always say is Mother Africa, whether you like it or not. That's where our roots lie. And you know, and of course culturally where we are, you know, because I'm proud of our Taino you know, history too, right? Of the Haitians that were there before the Africans got there as well, before the whites got there also.
Yep, indigenous people, they're a part of us.
Yeah, they are part of us. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm not Taino, I'm straight. You know, and I know this is huge because of how proud we are in Haiti of our African lineage. We tend to say, oh, we're Tainos are not part of us, but they are, you know, because I say, you know, I was born in a mountain called Capolica, and actually you can't even find it on the map. That's how hidden it is. And I grew up there. This is where my family are from. And you cannot say that the Tainos, when they left, they all went back to the mountains and they took some of the slaves with them too that were brought from Africa, you know, because they're like, okay, you can live in the mountains. And Haiti is the most mountainous, you know, island in the Caribbean. And so you see that in a way that folks that actually left the city that were not safe, they went back to the mountains, and I still have my roots there. My mother was buried there in a mountain. You know, so I cannot say, oh, well, the Tainos are not part of me because they are part of me. Also, I think soon enough, you know, with history, with blogs like this, I hope to raise that awareness. And I always tell people, you know, Haitian food is definitely one of the most underrepresented food, you know, in the United States and maybe the world. And I hope to, what I do with how I show up, I hope that I can change and make an impact in that area as well. And I'm pretty sure, Leanna, you probably feel the same way too.
Yeah, and I'll say this to be clear, my blog isn't just Bajan food. If you look at it, there's all kinds of stuff. There's Chinese food, there's Italian food, there's Southern food because it's true to how I cook, right? Like the way that I cook is informed by where I've traveled, where I live. I live in Atlanta now, so there's so much that I've learned about Southern cuisine and being able to make those connections. So like, oh, we have something just like this in the Caribbean. So it's all over the place, but still, to your point, I think food is an important part of how we preserve culture, how we preserve stories, how we pass down things to our children, to other members of our family. There are so many things that I do in the kitchen because of the way I learned from my grandmothers, from my mother. I hope to impart those one day to my daughter and to my son. And that, when they come home from college or from work or from travels or wherever they grow up and decide to be and decide to do, that they are craving these things, right? That they have those sensory memories when they smell a certain thing. Like to this day, every time I smell sauteing onion and thyme and tomato in a pan, I think of my grandmother because so many of her dishes started that way. Whether it was she was just making corned beef and rice or she was making snapper stew, whatever it was, there are just certain smells, certain sounds. And so I hope to pass those along to my kids and that they have those same kind of fond memories with me and my husband that I have with my mom and my dad and my grandparents in the kitchen around the table, sharing about our days, sharing about our lives, staying connected because it's so easy to just get wrapped up in what you have going on in yourself. And I feel like meal time is a time to just sit down and come together and break away from what you may be doing as an individual and just reconnect with the people in your life who mean the most to you.
Mhm. We don't do that enough, like we don't sit together and eat together like our ancestors did and how they connected. Now with the hustle and bustle of life, we got a million things going on and it's really hard to preserve those moments like you're talking about, Leanna. It's hard to say, oh well, I cook because I want to pass this on. But even with the kids nowadays, like it's really hard to have one of them interested in being in the kitchen, because they have a lot going on too. So it's beautiful to hear that that's how you're trying to preserve your culture. And I think for me too, I would love that. I don't have any kids just yet, but I would love one of them to be interested in, the way that I cook and why I cook the way that I do. And, hopefully keep that tradition going. And, I come from a huge family. There's 13 of us, brothers and sisters, and there's over 20 nieces and nephews. So, my family is huge. And so I think that it's always been important to us to be together, to share a meal together, no matter, how spread apart we are. But, when it's dinner time, everybody's cracking up. Haitians were huge on jokes. So we're gonna crack jokes, we're gonna roast you on the table. But it makes it worthwhile. That's what it's about. That's what it's about, connecting over food, loving each other, respecting each other. And I feel like with food, like we all speak the same language. Food brings us together. It doesn't matter. Don't be afraid to try different foods. Because for me, even throughout the Caribbean, I'm like, oh, what's that? Or I'll be like, oh, that's familiar. I go to New Orleans. I'm trying their food because I'm a foodie. So I love to eat. And so, I'm like, oh, what you got there? Is that fried chicken? How are you doing that? I'm in the kitchen because I'm curious, but again, we should all be curious about each other, curious about our food, because our food speaks volume into who we are as a person.
Mhm.
And so I always say, whoever's cooking, I'm here to learn, I'm here to see, okay, because what does that chicken bring up for you? Grandma taught you that? Yeah, and they'll tell you too. Yeah, that's how my granny did it. And that's how she taught my mama to do it, or that's how that's how my dad did this, and this is what he taught me, like, and it's beautiful to hear like how happy they are about it. This is what I learned, and then I'm open to sharing it. And that's what I do on my page too. It's like people can say, oh, this is not how you make this. And I'll say, this is how I learned in the villagers in Haiti. And it doesn't say that I'm not Haitian enough because I don't cook the same way that you do, right? It just says that, okay, from my family and the village, the villagers that I grew up in, this is the way they cook. This is how they marinated their meats. This is what they did. And this is what I was taught. And of course, I'm going to put my own flair to it.
Yeah.
But to that, it's beautiful that, the way that food history just, it does this thing, it locks us together. Because I love Leanna already. What? Just because you told me about your food. And then I learned
we gotta
about
get
your
together.
family.
But that's food, the great equalizer, right? It's the connector. It's the portal to someone's world, right? Like I feel like if you meet someone and you're like, I don't even know what we're gonna talk about. Do we even have anything in common? Start talking about food.
Listen,
You will
the
see
story
how
goes.
quickly that conversation opens up.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
That is a beautiful point. I think that'll take us out, right? Food is a great connector, a great way of understanding each other individually, but also from a greater standpoint culturally, in terms of who we are, where we come from, and the histories and people we bring along with us today. So thank you both tremendously for sharing so much of your wisdom, your expertise, your love of food, of course, with us here at Strictly Facts. I will be sure, as always, to include the links to your pages and so forth in our show notes to our listeners to check out Kerline and Leanna's pages, see all of the amazing work that they're doing with sharing food from Barbados, from Haiti, and as Leanna pointed, throughout different cultures, of course, throughout the world. So thank you again to you both for sharing with us, and to our Strictly Facts listeners. I hope, as always, that you enjoyed it a little more. Thanks for tuning in to Strictly Facts. Visit strictlyfactspodcast.com for more information from each episode. Follow us at Strictly Facts Pod on Instagram and Facebook, and at Strictly Facts PD on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in to Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Before you go, remember Caribbean Legal Solutions connects you with experienced and vetted attorneys across the Caribbean, ensuring you find reliable help right in your home country, whether you're dealing with the land issues, probate matters, or seeking legal advice for family. Their networks spans Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, Grenada, Barbados, Dominica, the Dominican Republic, St. Vincent, and more. Visit CaribbeanLegalSolutions.com or give them a call today. This ad contains general information about Caribbean Legal Solutions and is not intended as legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney for legal advice specific to your situation.